right-hand side column. And let's go back to our little sheet here. And on the one that's only got the 3 columns on it, the top one says Issues Mobilization Program Grants. Now, I'm looking at the state of Ohio, and I didn't see any Issues Mob grants at all last year from anybody. This is the other pot of money that is made available to you using a lot of those services we talked about this morning. I'm trying to get the public to move in a certain area on a particular issue. Examples. The most extreme example was the state of Louisiana that did a statewide ballot initiative to eliminate the transfer tax. Now that's huge, that's big. NER gave $942,000. Louisiana put in $700,000. Had to pass it through the legislature. They had to get the voters in the whole state to vote on it. They won 80-20. So that's your extreme case. But there are a lot of local issues you can do too with this particular fund that if you're imaginative, you can think about it. Everything from a water utility increase that the Common Council is going to vote on, that you want to educate the public on so that they don't raise the water rate. You'd be surprised at how many opportunities you can have with this Issues Mobilization Fund. The fund, as you see on the chart, it meets 8 times a year. The grants up to 10 grand are just for the leadership. 100,000, you got to go a little higher to the leadership team. And then you'll notice the dates, starting January 10th all the way to October 26th. And you see the request cutoff dates. They're all listed there for you. So if you're an AE or a GAD, you want to keep this around, because if you've got something that you think is going to happen in local government, and you think it's going to be an issue that you want to go communicate to the public on, you want to poll on it, you want to actually have a little campaign around the issue, those dates are your guidelines. We get a lot of them. Joe Molinaro runs it in DC. We get a lot of them in the 10,000 category, $15,000 category, maybe a couple polls. In many ways, it may just be a poll. As Meredith was talking about before, about on the smart growth side, it may be a polling issue on something that somebody's trying to push in your local unit of government. You guys have any examples in the past where you've done smoke stuff at all in Ohio?
Well, we gotten involved in a school funding ballot issue a long time ago, and we asked for and received so much money from NAR's Issues MOB Fund, we were reluctant to go back because the issue got crushed at the polls, unfortunately. But we were on the right side, ballot issues are notoriously difficult to gauge in terms of where they're going to go. But as far as statewide ballot issues, one of the last things we got involved in was a ballot issue that was a combination of ballot issues that would have, believe it or not, adversely affected the way our PAC raises money by changing the levels that individuals could give to a PAC. It was promoted largely by the labor unions.
Of course.
So that's an example where there was a statewide issue that we felt, it wasn't a land use issue, it wasn't school funding, it wasn't the typical kind of thing that you would expect. But the state has an Issues Mobilization Fund. We use that money, and then the normal progression of ways to go about it is to then apply to NAR. And we got additional funding, and that's one example. We've been lucky because we haven't had a whole lot of ballot issues statewide, at least, that we've felt the need to get involved in. And that's why there's that big zero. At the local level, though, those issues are every bit as important as the ones that have statewide significance, because if it passes at the local level, the chances are it'll proliferate and make its way up to or over to the State House in Columbus, and God forbid to the inside the Beltway at DC. So, yes, Judy.
Bob, the sign issue that we had in Euclid.
Right.
That was really big here in Ohio. they were trying to ban yard signs. They had banned them, and we fought, and the state gave us money, and gave money, and so did NAR, and it was a big thing. In fact, it came out later, if I'm not mistaken, that we won big on it because they felt it was an issue of discrimination. Wasn't that the final?
Yeah.
Right.
Paul?
Maybe I'm mistaken, but is there or was there a criteria that the state had to pony up funds before you could get funds from NAR?
They're kind
I don't
of,
see it
I mean,
already,
there's a
that's
they'd like to see a matching element, at least a portion from the state and a portion from the local, if you can. I mean, there are associations I've sat, I'm sure you've sat to the Issues Mobilization Committee meetings that have come in with and just gotten money from NAR, and again, showed things like in-kind contributions, how they were able to do it. But if you do have access to, and for the locals, I mean, OER does have an Issues Mob fund, so if there are monies you can access to match, not necessarily match it dollar for dollar, but it's some sort of contribution, yeah, I mean, it is a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
not like a strict.
Let me give you this. Let me give you the skinny on that whole issue. If you get, as Meredith said, if you put a little money in, great. They like that. It's not mandatory. However, I can tell you that I know of 2 or 3 grants over the last 24 months, because Mike Thiel, my successor, sat on the committee, where somebody on the committee said, why don't they have some skin in the game? And nobody on the call said, it's not on the application form. Well, the realtor who must have had a bad day said, well, I think it should be. And it got defeated. And then it got re-brought back again because everybody sort of recalibrated and blah, 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 blah. This is the human nature of this stuff. We had a case just a couple days ago where a very large one was coming through, and they're trying to do these on phone calls because if you know the legislative world, you can't wait for the May meetings, you got to move. And one realtor called up and he was furious that this was being done on a phone call. And he wanted the entire committee to come to Washington, D.C. for a day and debate this. It was a $1 million request. And we've got big ones. And he was very upset that they were not doing the due diligence of the members' money, and they should come to D.C. and spend an entire day and debate it. The rest of the committee said, I got stuff to do, and he lost. But they're very passionate folk that are on these committees. I mean, and I'm really glad that a couple of you pointed out that you've been on some of the committees too. They take this stuff really serious. And that's why I think both Meredith and I are trying to warn you, it's not a negative. They want to give the money out. Don't get me wrong. It's just they really believe, sort of like how realtors fill out contracts. You know, you don't get paid unless it's filled out right. And if somebody looks like they're not filling it out, they sort of call you on it. And that's why what we're trying to tell you is, between Meredith and Fletch and his team and whatever, our job is to work with the Washington staff with you so that by the time it gets to Molinaro's Issues Mobilization Committee, there shouldn't be a realtor having to question what the form says. Now it's just a question of, is it a good idea to spend the money? But I've had a couple cases where that's happened. I think that's why the rumor is out there sometimes that if you don't have skin in the game, you don't get the money.
Here's the criteria. You do need state approval, though, from a local. And that was a little bit different than the IE stuff. I mean, the state does have to sign off on it. For most states, it's usually not that hard. It's a signature and letting them know. And that's why if there is a state fund, also that's what people find out. So that is the criteria. And you do need the signature of a state or local president, too, on it.
Takeaway on this one, and then we'll keep moving along. Going back to the original purpose of today, what do we get for the 40 bucks? This is another one where it may not be right in front of you today, but if you're turning to your members and your board of directors and said, I just went to this thing in Columbus, and the national people were talking about this fund is available to you. And how, Fletch, I don't know how the decision is made if they come to you first for the money with the state or the national, but you obviously go to both. I didn't know, is there a culture here in Ohio where if it's a smaller amount, you go to the state first, you don't go to any RMI?
Yeah, no, I mean, we encourage the local boards,
great.
Once they make the decision that this is something they want to do, to come to the state association.
Perfect. Perfect. And by the way, that's a tribute to you because many states do not have a fund like this. So you have a nice choice of both. Any other questions on issues? Okay. Now the rest of the stuff on the right-hand side here, I can go through with you in a more detailed sense. You know, the polling, registration, consultant campaign management, all of those things we spent this excruciating time this morning talking about under the IE program. But the main takeaway for you is this. When you go home and you say, what did we get for the $40? The independent expenditure program is one pot of money that's segregated that can use a lot of these services. If you don't want to use the IE money and you want to get involved in campaigns, you could use many of these services without doing an independent expenditure. So all of these things listed here, polling, campaign services, voter activation, all these things are available to you if you want to use it when you get back to try to explain it to what the $40 is for. So I guess I'm going to ask, and Fletch, if you and Paul or anybody want to jump here too from the state perspective, do we need to talk any more about these types of services or programs? Because I'm happy to go through any one more specifically. Yes?
Okay. You talk about all these things on the right side, the polling, blah, 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 blah. All this is available for $40. But correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't the majority of this stuff available before the $40?
Yes and no. It was there, but in many cases it was on a test case basis and a very limited basis. So Gavin's example was, we did some last year, but remember I mentioned that campaign services began in 2008 and 9. So they bought the voter activation list in 2008 or 9. The polling was available, but on a much more limited scale than it is today. The contracts have just been re-signed that are much more scaled contracts that offer much more breadth of what these programs are. But yes, they were available on a limited basis as they rolled out year after year. And now I guess the best way to describe it is this. All of these programs are now available at one time. If you were to bring me in here 3 years ago, some of these weren't on the list yet. They were coming out as they became more and more integrated into the program. Remember I talked to you about that Second Century Initiative money this morning? The couple $1 million they took out of the pot? A lot of those were to seed the start of these programs. Stinton stood up in front of the board and he said, I have 20th Century Initiative and a bunch of them are campaign service stuff. Well, that was reaching in like Realtor University and the credit union and all that other stuff. Part of it was reaching into that pot, taking a couple $1 million and starting a lot of these services that are here today. These are now dues fund services that are part of that $40 dues increase. Or another way to say it is, if they didn't increase the dues by $40, you wouldn't have had some of these services because they were one-time funded out of that Second Century Initiative. Did that help at all, or no?
There's more money. There's more money.
No. And honestly, I don't have a problem with $40. I just have to be careful about being disingenuous when I go back to my membership and tell them what the $40 is for.
Right.
The diversity grant that you did, you can do again, and that's one of the best.
I'm not going to lie to them. I'm not going to deceive them. You know, I would tell them, okay, these things were available before they received before, and now they decided to keep it going. That's fine. Are any of these items new on this list?
The IE.
Yeah, other than the IE.
No, the rest of them were there, but on a very limited basis. I mean, when you think about it, all we did for the last 2 to 3 years were basically experiments. Supreme Court in Michigan, the mayor's race in Washington, D.C., an aldermanic race, Columbus, Ohio, they were doing it in limited rollouts, basically testing. But there was not enough money to be able to turn around and say to all the boards in the country, go do campaign services. They were there on a limited basis. Okay, anything else on these services at all that you want to cover and talk about? No? Okay, let's move on then, I guess, to just at the end there. We talked about customized polling. And the last one is building the Realtor Party strength. The My Realtor Party team consulting. That's obviously Meredith. We have, if you saw the map, I have 7 people. 6, one is, the new one's coming on board. 7 people that are divided the country. All of these folks are basically there for you to use, to come back into your state if you want to use them, as you have another meeting and doing some strategic planning about some of the things that we talked about today. The consultant campaign management, again, those are one of the vendors that NER has, along with any of us, that if you have a campaign and you want to talk to somebody about doing a campaign for the first time, there's a consultant that will talk to you about that. The Conveo, how many of you have Conveo? The software system, Conveo? Yes, yes, but you're not excited.
No, I just finished
The training. How was it?
It was
Painful?
fine.
Was it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you have it. How many of you use the Conveo system? Okay. Good, bad, better than Voter Act? United? I think this one is a well-kept secret. This is the one that they have an actual software agreement with that's for call to actions and doing voter IDs and all the rest of stuff. But it also can be used for newsletters. If you got constant contact and are paying for it, you can dump it. Because you shouldn't have to pay for it if you've got this, because it does the same thing. So it's a program that is a licensed agreement that NER has that's available for you, for all the local boards at no cost, which is part of the package. I've heard mixed reaction on it. If you have somebody that has a dedicated use of time to use it, it's very good. If you've got somebody that runs out the door and uses it once a month because they got to write the call to action and press the button, it doesn't work that way. You've got to have somebody that works it. I mean, it is training sensitive, but it's a good product if you know how to use it. Anybody use it for anything else besides call to actions? Anybody use it for a newsletter? Yeah.
We use it for our monthly newsletters and for communications with brokers.
The work pretty good. I mean,
yeah. The only issue that we've encountered with it is, for instance, when we're doing our future elections, the fact that you can opt out of those emails that always puts the opt-out message at the bottom, which I understand is very important for things like the director elections. We don't necessarily want people opting out of that because that will opt them out of any future newsletters or anything from that system. But aside from that, we have very good success with it.
good. Good. Well, again, for the boards that don't have it, if you're interested, it's available to you. You sign a license agreement. They provide the training, and it's there for your use if you wish to have it. The shared GAD program, I had some folks come up at lunch today and ask about, is this money? And the answer is no. It's a set of guidelines for how to do a shared GAD program. This is the #1 question I get when I go around the country is, well, now that you've told us that we have all this stuff and we don't have the infrastructure, why doesn't NER pay for GADs and lots of local staff to be out there to help implement it? It's not an unfair question. I mean, 200 GADs, 1,400 local boards, all this stuff. At the moment, it's not. Will it be in the future? I don't know. My guess is that anything dealing with labor, they're going to be very skittish about because, you know, where do you end the pot on it? But I do think that it's something that we've got to look at long term, and that is there it was suggested at lunch, and some other people have suggested it too, you know, some type of a grant program that goes back to the states that they could use the money to more effectively extend the types of services to help implement these types of things. At the moment, it's not on the radar. But I don't question it could be possible. And then the last one is the broker involvement program. That's a program that NER has where the broker consents to use his brand or her brand along with some framing to do call to actions with his agents. And NER has a program on that where they count the number of brokers in the state that participate in it. And I think Ohio has a certain goal. I don't know where you are on it, but
We're getting there.
you're getting there. Is it a tough call?
Yeah.
Yeah, brokers just aren't interested, or?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. We got to a certain level, and you know, we had a little breakthrough where one big broker signed on last year, but it took a lot of effort to do it, and it's like we've hit the wall.
Yeah. Well, it's one where you know, you either have to get other brokers to sell it. This one's really hard for staff to sell sometimes. You got to get 2 or 3, you know, brokers in the area that believe in it. that are willing to say it's okay, if your agents aren't going to be offended, it makes good sense to do. In Wisconsin, we had Imhoff, and he was a large broker, and he went around to the other brokers in the state and said it's a good thing to do, it helps us. And how he sold it, really, it was, it's no different than one of your managers standing up at a meeting saying it's a call to action, plus it's our brand, wrapped around it, the company's brand. So it's really sort of a personalized decision. We're going to stop here because we've covered practically all of the programs. The Game Changer, which is on the bottom, that deadline is come and gone. It was January 31st. We have 28, 29 applications that the subgroup is going to start looking at Monday to try to pick the winners for that program to be announced at AEI in Louisville. So what have we not covered? What questions did you have that we haven't covered? The original intent was to come in here and try to explain our programs from an operational standpoint, implementation standpoint. What else do we need to cover that we've not covered? Because there's the part of the agenda that sort of says environmental scan. What are the issues we're facing? That kind of, and I said we were going to sort of put that aside. That's the one where if Fletch wants to come back up, or Paul, or whatever, and you want to talk a little collectively on where does Ohio go from here, and how do you want to implement this collectively as a team? Maybe part of that discussion could take place too before we're done. Yes.
I have a question. Everyone pays their $40, but it's on a first come, first served basis for these grants. So what if we apply for a grant, but we get turned down, there's not enough for that particular one? Will they say, well, you got turned down for this grant, but if you would like to apply for this one, there's room here or money here, you can apply for this grant?
That's a great question, and I honestly don't have a single answer for that. I don't think. Turn the camera off. I don't think any art is that organized. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I don't.
The goal is to make sure you do get it, which is why the more pre-work you do, the better. So I wouldn't even stress about that side of it, because.
Well, no, I'm just saying we go back to our members and they're saying, we pay this $40, we get it's a first come, first served basis on the grants, and if we never win the grant, then we never get a return on our money. Then they're up in arms. So
I can tell you this, because I'm getting this report. Last year, so now I'm going to go back, the gentleman in the back of the room has got a little issue here with the $40. So not you going back and talking about the No, I'm going back to his issue about it's the same programs, disingenuous, how do you do all that stuff? This is a case where last year, none of the grant programs ran out of money.
Can you say what the percentages of people who make applications who actually receive them?
I don't know the number. I just know it's a small number, and I know I have told the NAR staff I plan on breaking every record when I'm done, going around the country. Meaning, my success ratio and NAR's success ratio on this program is real simple. Think about the metrics. If you raise the money and you filled all these pots of money, and at the end of the year every pot's got a lot of money in it, we didn't do a very good job. The only exception I'm going to go on record with is the IE program. And you probably now understand why, thinking of all this complexity. It's not a question of not giving the money out. It's a question is, do we have the sophistication to ask for the money? But on these grant programs, I'm telling you dime to dollar, it really comes down to your desire to do the work. Number one, and do you have the staff time, and can you do it? And the best thing I can just tell you is that I think they're going to do everything they can this year to fund everything they can do. But
I've been around Realtor World for 12 years. I know very little that have actually been turned down. There have been a few who've been sent back saying, can you modify this, and change this and this. I know, I can count on my hand, on one hand, how many people I know have actually been rejected, like completely rejected. And then they were able to come back, the next time and fix it. thing. So
Let me tell you why I'm just being brutally honest, because when I took this job, I basically said I'm not going to be just some NAR staffer. I've been 36 years in the field, and I know how realtors react. That's why I get very emotional about this, because I've also been around long enough to watch 10 realtors on a committee because it's November, and there's only 100,000 left in the pot, and some board or state comes in with the most earth-shaking proposal. I mean, we're talking knock it out of the park, so critical to our business success, and they go, I think we can only give them 50,000 because we only have 100,000 left. Now, is that smart thinking, or is that just what? Is it the end of the year thinking? The point is that they're wonderful people. They make a decision, and you and I may think it's the most knockout park thing. You have done everything perfect, and some guy from Colorado just doesn't think it makes sense. And that's been just the challenge, I think, of all of this, is because we have such great diversity. But I can tell you, in my heart and mind, Mo Vesey, if he can find the money, he wants to fund you so bad, because the leadership team of NAR, they know what this 40 bucks is all about, and they don't want to be sitting next November and having 10 of you come into the November meetings and say, we applied, we never got any money. So I'm gonna bet on your side on this one.
So since you've been in the business for a long time, you'll understand that some realtors are kind of cynical. So they'll come back and they'll say, well, you know, if there's money left over in the pot,
Right.
What does NAR do with that money that's left over in the pot? And we had a situation at our recent RPAC committee member where we had a broker who will remain nameless that doesn't support RPAC, and he has his reasons. He has a personal belief that NAR does things he doesn't believe in with funds, and that they're doing things he doesn't believe in with this additional $40, and you probably will never be able to convince him otherwise, and that's okay. You're always going to have those people.
Yep.
But some people just really innocently, and you can tell them, you can go back and say, well, NAR does this, this, and this. What does that leftover money that doesn't get used, that sits in the pot, where does that money go?
Mostly gets reprogrammed right back to the following year.
Okay, so it'll stay in there and it'll get used for the following
The
year.
ones that doesn't, that's not required to. When you think about it, the $40 million, and I'm just learning this, the $40 million, when it was sold to be segregated money. So the issues money, the IE money, the campaign service money, all that stuff, if it doesn't get back, it gets resegregated right back into sort of like a line item. It just sort of rolls over into the following year. The campaign service stuff is, part of it's in the Realtor Initiative, part of it's not. Some of it's part of the regular dues money. So there's some community service money that may not get rolled over, but it's never been a problem because they've never exhausted it. So now that they're really being a big push to get it out there, my guess is we're going to have money left over. The only area where we're not, I can tell you already, is the issues money, because we're getting close. We're bumping up on the line already, and it's February. Because they're doing some really big ones around the country, like $3 million in Oregon for a transfer tax initiative, $1 million in Missouri, $1 million in Florida. I mean, they've got some really big ticket item stuff on the 2012 election. So most of it is reprogrammed right back into the program for next year. And invite me back in a year, and I'm going to have better history. I just can't answer the question right now because it's the first year.
Sure.
There was another question over here.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as what you were saying about, or one of you, I can't say everybody, was saying about going back to your membership and saying, what if we were denied? I mean, I think since the RPAC program, which is the one most people here know the most about, you've applied for that money and hopefully received money, but I can only think of one case, maybe two, where that money was not approved, and it was only because, as Meredith said, there was a problem with the application. So, as Bill and Meredith say, they want to give you the money. They want to give it to you. And the other thing I would stress is, we're here to help you fill out the application.
Yep.
So we are. I mean, Debbie, Michael, Scott, all those RPAC partnership program applications, there's a lot of stuff on there that maybe you don't know off the top of your head that we can find out in 5 minutes for you. And so we try to stress that to you. I mean, before you start going down the road on these, call us. And, if we don't know the answer, we'll call Meredith. But,
I won't answer.
Yeah.
I think maybe to piggyback on what he said, and we talked about this earlier, comment. I think it's a matter of communication. What you're doing now probably should be done on a regular basis or in some other format to make the membership aware that these services are out there. I think that there's a lot of people that feel untouched and don't realize that these things are available to their boards and to themselves individually, so they feel like, okay, well, you took $40 of my money, I can, you know, it's tough enough to sell a house to get this done. What am I getting out of it? So if you can show them, and it's touching them, then, you know, that's a thing. And not just national, it needs to be state too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I can tell you, and Meredith, you heard her say this when she was asking for people to give examples. The best way to sell this is when the guys in the back of the room told every example of how to fill out a form and what they did. I can tell you that we can sit here till we're blue in the face. All we can do is sort of fill out the content of the program. But when I heard all of you talk about your RPAC grants and you share different ideas, it's the most powerful way to sell the program. What we don't have a lot of success stories on yet, Marley, we don't have them on is campaign services and IEs. Now you're very lucky here because you've got the Columbus board. There were maybe 5 of those around the whole country last year that we did tests with. So I don't have someone like him to be able to stand up and say, oh, and by the way, we used Joe Good, we did this, we did this, we did this. All I have is sort of a worksheet here that says we think it's going to take 90 days. I think a year from now, I'm going to have much more success in being able to tell success stories on those areas. What we do good now is campaigns, or excuse me, hard money, community stuff that we're used to. We just don't have a lot of examples on IEs and campaign services. When we do, it's going to make selling the program a lot easier.
Now that you've heard everything too, are there issues brewing in your areas that you have questions about as to whether or not it would fit in any of these programs that while you've been sitting here all day? We have a little bit of time and I'm happy to kind of figure that out. Yeah.
I'm a councilman in my community. I'm also our legislative chair.
Yeah.
So we have a small community, but it's an older town. We have a downtown area that the merchants are saying, you know, businesses are moving out. We have newer stuff everybody's going to. Is there any type of things we can do to help down, you know, historic downtown areas to study, to do a smart growth? I mean, and we also have a situation where we have a school district who just built a brand new elementary facility for it's 5 communities that go here to this one element. Now each community has a big yellow, white dinosaur sitting there of a 100-year-old school that are being offered to the communities. Are there opportunities to see what kind of studies can be done in these things? What are the future use for these buildings? Because that's something, I mean, it affects the economics of the community, it affects the people that live there, and if the Realtor Association can take a lead on these things, it puts us in a real good light.
That's where Smart Growth Grant comes in. Yep, that's exactly what it's for. That, and you can possibly do some stuff through Housing Opportunity Grants too. And that's the other thing you can, just by the way, and it's a newer thing that we've talked about trying to, it's not like combining the grants, but there may be something that fits both Housing Opportunity and Smart Growth. If that's the case, we've talked with the NAR staff first to figure out which portion would be a Smart Growth versus Housing Opportunity. That's one of them that might be, and just so you know which elements that it would work, and so the committees understand that too. But yes, kind of like that for the most part would be Smart Growth. And you can use that to pay for studies.
It's been a couple of years since I've been to the NAR site looking up for the grant money, for the Smart Growth, but I can tell you a couple of years ago when I served on a nonprofit development company, you could go to the NAR site and look up of existing samples of what areas or what states took advantage of Smart Growth money and how they utilized it. I mean, if that would be helpful, you know, you're trying to determine where you might be able to use some of that money.
Somewhere on here, there's a listing of some of the other programs that they've used. So,
Pardon?
one of the things we've asked, what we've asked is for, there are so many wonderful examples of what's been done around the country over the last couple of years, and they're not up here. And what we get from everybody is just take a lot of the examples, so when I'm browsing around, I can just look at what 10 or 15 other boards did. It would get me thinking about this, because I don't think about this every day. When I've decided to do this and do a grant, I just don't want to sit with a blank piece of paper. I've got too much going in my life right now. Give me some help to do that. And we're asking that we put up examples for you. Yeah, David?
Wouldn't it be easier if, when we do these things, we send you a summary along with a copy of it, rather than you trying to figure out what we did with the money?
Well, it's interesting. I have yeah, it's great, and I actually have a printout of everything that was in 011 that you did, but it doesn't, David, have the specifics. It just says,
some sort of a summary.
Yeah.
Part of the grant process requires them to do.
What I was reading from is some of those examples that we're trying to get up there, that's like 2 lines, 2 sentences, just kind of explaining some of it, but as far as what you're asking, as far as the more detailed and stuff, you do have to provide an evaluation.
Right.
The evaluation is very, very simple. You know, did you do the program? Was it great? But that's what we're trying to get out of some of the summaries of some of the examples.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm lucky enough to be named RPAC Fundraising Forum Vice Chair for this year, and at National. And our goal in May is to have different boards and associations send in YouTube little events of things that they've done. And so we're going to try and compile those so that as we receive those, we'll have them put on the site somehow, so that anybody who wants to create an activity can go in there and look and see exactly what it looks like and how they did it.
You know, I tell you, the best advantage going around the country to this day, I think the best one, I told you about the state of Oregon with wine tasting.
Yeah.
They had to raise $1 zillion. They had 4 stops, and at the last stop, you signed the check. Now imagine this.
Oh.
You go Pinot, you go, 4 different stops, and then at the end, you're sitting there sort of going, take the pledge card, and we'll take the check. They raised a lot of money. They raised a lot of money, and they did it. It was really cute how they did it. They did it on a little bus. They did it on a little bus, and they handed people a little thing, like a little side thing. So you had to put your checkbook in. So everybody had to have a checkbook to get on the bus, and then they went all the way around. It was pretty good. So good idea. Fletch, you want to come up? Sure. Let's see where we're going to go from here.
I walked a little bit too far and I was right into the light. Where do you want me to go? Let me tell you something.
I was supposed to spell that.
Careful.
The information that's up here is really good, at least portions of it are, it's all good. And what we will do is certainly put, if not all of it, most of it up on OAR's website, or links so that it's available from 2 sources. The other thing, which I think is begging to be done, is to develop, and I'm not sure what the makeup of it will be, what it should look like, what it would be called, but what Bill referred to as possibly a My Realtor Party Ohio, so that we have, at the state level, when it's necessary, one place to go when could be complicated decisions are made on some of the resources which are available through the My Realtor Party NAR, namely the independent expenditures. It makes no sense whatsoever for every local association to create a 527 and call it something different. That makes no sense whatsoever. Particularly when the state is going to be put in at least some portion or some position of a review on independent expenditure requests. It should all kind of, those at least should funnel up. And there are other decisions that need to be made. The only, again, in the independent expenditure area, the only allocation decision which is being given to us is that $100 and whatever it was, $1,000 is supposedly to be split 50-50 between the state and the locals. It doesn't have to be that way if you get an agreement that maybe on a given year it makes more sense for the local boards to spend every bit of it. Or maybe there will be instances where there aren't a lot of local elections in a given year, and it makes more sense for it to go the other direction. But those types of decisions, we need to spend some time and to develop that type of coordination, because that's what this is all about. It's not all about knowing what's out there and applying for it. It's also about trying to do it in a coordinated way to the extent that we possibly can. So I've already been approached by Sharon Sample, the chairman of the Executive Officers Committee in Ohio, and we're going to kind of collaborate and do that.